All right, hello everybody. Welcome again to another virtual lesson or a video on our lesson of chapter 11. So today we're going to continue working on geometry. Okay, so we worked on, usually for the first three lessons, we were working with two-dimensional shapes. We were learning how to classify, identify the polygon. We're identifying triangles and we're identifying quadrilaterals. And now we're going to continue to work on shapes, but we're going to be focusing on three-dimensional figures. Okay, and now what is a three-dimensional figures? So as we've been working on two-dimensional figures. Okay, and two-dimensional figures can be identified kind of like if you're drawing on a piece of paper, right? You see the length and you see the height, but you do not see any width. So a three-dimensional figure is kind of how we see, well, how all of us see shapes in the real world. So a 3D dimension has a length and has a height like a two-dimensional figure, but also has a width. So it has another depth perception to it. Okay. And we're going to be focusing on today on polyhedrons. And what is a polyhedron? A polyhedron is either a prism or a pyramid, which are three-dimensional figures with faces that are polygons. Okay, so remember a polygon is a shape, right? A shape that has three or more sides. Okay, so now here are some examples of prisms and pyramids. So if we look right here, we have triangular prisms, we have square prisms, rectangular prisms, pentagon prisms, hexagonal prisms, octagonal prisms, triangular pyramids, square pyramids, rectangular pyramids, pentagonal pyramids, hexagonal pyramids, and octagonal pyramids. So a prism or a pyramid is named depending on its face. And where are the faces? The faces is where you see the polygon. So if you look at a triangular prism, look at the face right here. Right in here, this is the face, right? So it gets its triangular name through its face. Same as a triangular pyramid. And we're going to get into when we start separating them and knowing the difference, we're going to get into that in the next slide. So I just want to make sure the way that you identify a 3D figure is by its face, right? So here would be a square prism. Why? Because it has a square face. This is a pentagonal because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So it's a pentagonal, in this case, prism. So the way you identify a 3D figure is by its face. And we're going to get now into what is a prism and a pyramid. So let's talk about prisms first. A prism is a polyhedron, right, with two congruent polygons as its base. So it's going to have two faces, okay? So the difference between a prism and a pyramid is a prism will have two faces, one on each end, and a pyramid will only have one, and we'll get into pyramid later. So the main thing that you want to notice when you're identifying is how many faces does it have. So if you look at a prism, look at this base right here. This is a triangle. And if you look at this bottom one right here, it's another triangle. So the fact that it has two polygons, two triangles, which will be the two faces, that would make it a prism. And in this case, I would identify this 3D shape right here as a triangular prism because it has two bases that are triangle shaped. Okay. And here's an example of a rectangular. It would look similar. A square, or also called a cube, a pentagonal prism, and a hexagonal prism, which would be 6 sides, 5 sides, 4 sides, 4 equal sides, congruent sides, and then 4 sides. So now let's move on to pyramids. So a pyramid is a polyhedron with one polygon base. And the lateral faces of a pyramid are triangles that meet to a common vertex. So basically, the most easiest way of identifying a pyramid is that it has a base, right? It has one face. In this case, is a triangle, it's triangular, right? And the lines on the sides, they meet at one specific point. So think of the Great Pyramids of Egypt, right? They're shaped, right? They have a base on the bottom and they meet at a vertex. They all meet at one specific point, kind of like a cone in a way. Everything meets at one specific point. So the way you would identify a pyramid is identifying that it only has one polygon for a face, which would be this triangle right here on the bottom in our example, and that all the sides meet at one specific vertex. So here are more examples here on the right. So we did the triangular pyramid that we discussed. We have a rectangular pyramid. If you notice, it is a rectangular base and all the lines meet at this vertex right here. Same thing for a square. Here's a square, and then they all meet at this vertex. Here's an example of a pentagonal one. All the sides meet. Think of it like a party hat. A party hat has a vertex, right? It meets all the way at the top. All the sides meet at the top. Hexagonal pyramids, it's a hexagon-shaped face, and they all meet at one point, which is called the vertex. All right. Next one. So what happens if a face is not a polygon? So remember that a polygon is when three or more lines come together to create a shape, which is called a polygon. But a circle, even though we call them shapes, it's not a polygon because it doesn't have any sides. So these are called non-polyhedron figures. Okay, and I want to get into what are the specific names. So when you have a circle, right, when you're dealing with a circle or a round shape, right, we call these non-polyhedrons, and here are some examples. So a cone, think of an ice cream cone. A cone has a circular face, all right, and then it meets at one vertex, kind of like a party hat, right? It meets at one vertex. So even though we might think of it as a circular pyramid, since it is not a polygon, we cannot call it a circular pyramid. We're going to call it a cone. Let's look at a cylinder. A cylinder is kind of like a soda can, all right? It's when they have two bases. So if we would normally see this and say, okay, that is a circular prism because it has two faces. But once again, since a circle, is not a polygon, it cannot be called a circular prism. It would be called a cylinder. So if you see a can-shaped 3D figure, we call it a cylinder, all right? And it's very important that you guys can go back to the videos. I'm going to upload the PowerPoint on Microsoft Teams so you guys can use it as notes and as reference when you're doing the assignments. And last but not least, we have something called a sphere. A sphere. And a sphere is a baseball, a basketball. Any 3D ball-shaped figure is called a sphere. There's no base. There's no faces. It's just one round piece of mass, like a basketball, like a baseball, a tennis ball, a golf ball. So any ball-shaped figure would be a sphere. So now, let's get into some examples. How can you classify and identify these shapes? All right, so here's example one that we have here. What is it, right? Is it a prism? Is it a pyramid? What polygon is at its face? So first and foremost, how can I classify this? I'm gonna look at the base. First and foremost, how many bases does it have? I see one base here. So if it is one base, and notice how all the sides meet at one vertex, right? I know that that is a pyramid. Now, what type of pyramid is it? I would have to identify the type of pyramid based on the face. It is a quadrilateral, obviously. It is 4. And I can either go with a rectangular prism, a rectangular pyramid, or a square pyramid because it looks like all sides are congruent. But just to be safe, we can name it a rectangular pyramid. Why? Because it has a rectangular face and all the sides meet at one specific vertex, making it a pyramid. Let's try the next one. Let's look over here. All right. Here we have a shape. All right. We need to identify the faces. Okay. So here we have one face. And then on the other side, we have the exact same face. Okay. We have the exact same face. So if it has two faces, we know it's not a pyramid because a pyramid has one face and they meet at the top at one vertex, right? So this is considered a prism because a prism has two faces that are congruent. So here it is a prism. And let's describe and identify the faces. The faces have 4 sides. They look like 4 congruent sides. So I can name this a square prism, right? A square prism or a rectangular prism, either or. In your assignment, it'll most likely always be a rectangular prism. All right, let's look at the next one. What is it? All right. Is it a polygon? Are the faces a polygon? Can it be a prism? Can it be a pyramid? Or is it a non-polyhedron figure? So I know that the faces are circular, right? It's a circle. And remember that a polygon needs to have 3 or more sides. Circles do not have sides, so it is non-polyhedron. Now, since it is non-polyhedron, I cannot name this a prism or a pyramid. So I would have to name it either a cone, a sphere, or a cylinder. And a cylinder would be your answer because it's like a soda can. Cylinder would be your answer. All right, let's look at the next one. What is this one? All right, once again, the face is a non-polyhedron. It is not a polygon. It is a circular shape. And the sides, since there's no sides, the shape, the figure meets at one vertex, which kind of looks like a cone, right? So that is why we name it a cone. Fix that. Okay. So now, I hope this video helped you out. Obviously, if you have any questions, please feel free to call me, message me. If a lot of us aren't understanding the concept, I'll be welcome and open to doing more Zoom meetings to clarify and to answer any questions. All right. Hope you guys have a great day and continue to stay safe and wash your hands.